Good morning, everybody. Great to see you guys. Really nice to have you with us. If we've not met, my name's Andy. I'm the vicar here, and it's an absolute treat that we can spend some time together this morning. Now, as Fionn teed up, we are thinking a bit about the Generosity Project, which is this project all about our church's finances and how we collectively can give together to contribute to what we believe God is doing here. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're talking about money, and specifically I'm asking if you would consider giving some of it to the church. Okay, hands up who already feels awkward about that. Okay, fine. Hands up who feels so awkward about that you didn't even raise your hand the first time because you felt awkward about that as well. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to metaphorically step over a line together. Going to step into a new mindset. And I believe it's a Jesus mindset because he didn't feel at all embarrassed about money. He didn't feel awkward about that. So it's sort of like Britishness is on this side of the line. That's us. And hands up, people especially. You're somewhere back there. Right, there's a line here. We're about to step over it together. Are you ready? Holding hands. We're over. Okay, we're over it. Okay, who's feeling good about it then? Who's feeling good about it? Okay, great. Let's have a go. So today I want to give you a little bit of an update on the Generosity Project, and I also want to speak on the topic, a generous gift. And I've got a passage I want to read to you too. So in September last year, we set aside 3 Sundays to think about generosity. And if you want, you can listen to those talks still. They're available on YouTube, on our podcast. And I do encourage you to go and look those up, and I trust that they'll be really useful to you. But by way of summary, I have an idea about how our church works, basically. I've got an idea. And the idea is this. There is no way that we can afford the stuff that we have to pay for as a church by giving together. Right? There's no way. It's not going to happen. Okay? That's not possible. Instead, if we can become a church who can say hand on heart, we are a generous church, whatever that looks like for us as individuals and collectively, we can say hand on heart, we are a generous church, then we can absolutely bank on God supplying all of our needs in the coming years. That's my theory. So over the last 5 years, we have benefited from absolutely huge amounts of generosity from other people. I mean, like hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of generosity. So we've had a whole building project done here in this building. There was a wall there, it got knocked down. All this was kind of mothballed. That's all been renovated, new carpets, creche, etc. All of that has happened. All of that was paid for by somebody else. It was given generously to us. Then we got a new heating system, didn't we? These like heaters. They don't work that well, but they work better than what we had before. Somebody else paid for that. Again, all of that was just a gift somebody gave to us as a church generously. There's a coffee shop over there that we've been able to start. Nearly all of the costs of that were paid for by somebody else. We've been beneficiaries of absolutely huge amounts of generosity, like nothing else I've ever seen anywhere. And I'm incredibly grateful to the people who gave it and also to God for that generosity. But a big chunk of that will not carry on forever. So this is an important thing to know if you're part of this church. Over the last few years, we've been part of a Church of England funded project. And the Church of England has given us loads of money to do loads of stuff here. And we've been able to afford things that we wouldn't have been able to afford previously. But at the end of this year, that funding comes to an end. It finishes. And what that means is, just on the surface, going forward, we will have a shortfall as a church of at least £50,000 a year. Okay, at least £50,000 a year. And maybe there's somebody here this morning who's like, I'll write that check. Okay, it's about £4,000 a month. No? Didn't think so. Sorry, you're just scratching your head. I thought that was a hand for a second. We were all going to go home. No, I don't think that's the way it's necessarily going to work, is it? Instead, the way that I believe we will see our needs met is that we'll contribute together, being generous together, Whatever that looks like for each of us individually, trying to figure out what God is asking us to do. And as we contribute together and become a generous church, then God will provide all of our needs, and we'll find that somehow the needs continue to be met. So then the question is, well, how will we know if we're a generous church? How will we know? Because everyone likes to think of themselves as generous, don't they? No one thinks of themselves as stingy particularly. So how would we actually know? Well, there's lots of signs that we might know that we're a generous church. But I've got one particular target that I've set us, which I think we've got a slide for. And my target is, I sort of felt like if 75% of us on a Sunday were giving regularly, then we could say, oh yeah, that would be a generous church. You know, right? Like, it's not going to be everybody. Obviously, lots of people come to our church for the first time. There are visitors. You might be here this morning for the first time, or a visitor. Unlucky, I'm so sorry. Come next week as well. But so it's not going to be 100%, is it? Because people aren't going to do that if they're new or exploring faith or whatever. But instead, we would say, well, what if it was like most of us? Most of us who say like, this is our church, this is the community that we're part of, we come here regularly, this is the church that we come to, then we collectively say, yeah, I will contribute whatever I can to represent generosity. So, and you can see where we're up to. So when we launched the Generosity Project in September, we estimate something like 41% of us on a Sunday who came to church were part of a giving household. So, you know, that includes kids whose parents give, spouses where joint bank accounts, etc. 41% about when we started. And since then, it's been brilliant. Loads of people have started giving regularly, and we've crossed the 50% barrier, which seems like an important, significant milestone to me. It means that on a Sunday now, most of us give regularly or are part of a household that gives regularly. But as you can see, we've got a little way to go. Right? There's a whole chunk, there's sort of nearly 25%. And so to put it in real numbers, I am on the hunt. I'm on the hunt for 28 people, 28 households who don't currently give, or who used to and have stopped for whatever reason, or maybe have given like one-off sporadic gifts, but have never kind of committed to giving in a regular pattern, who are now ready to say, I'll have a go at that. I'll have a go. 28 households. That's what I'm talking about. And maybe that's you this morning. So let me read to you a passage from 1 Kings, and we're going to delve into it. I think you're going to find this super interesting. So this is, if you've got a Bible and you want to follow along, it's 1 Kings chapter 17. And I'm starting at verse 7. 1 Kings 17, verse 7. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry, I'll read it, you can hear. It says this: sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, that is Elijah. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow there was gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, and bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we might eat it and die. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you've said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. This passage is like a bit of a family favourite of ours. And to give you context, the people of God have been divided into two nations. The smaller one is called Judah, and the bigger one is still called Israel. And we're in the bigger one, and they've just got a new king, and his name is Ahab, right? And the Bible says this about King Ahab. It says, he did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those who'd gone before him. It says he considered it trivial to commit to commit the sins of Jeroboam. And Jeroboam was like the previous sort of reigning champion of evil. So he was like the worst of the worst of the worst. Then we've got this new king, Ahab, and it says he thought it was trivial to do what Jeroboam was doing. And just as an aside on that, just notice that this is the way sin works. That what happens is something that was previously very shocking to you and felt risky starts to become trivial and starts to become normal, and you're no longer shocked by doing whatever it was. And when that happens, there's sort of only really one direction to go in, which is to seek out riskier and more shocking things to do. And that's a dangerous path to go on. And so you might just want to reflect, is there anything that I do that I would have previously been shocked by? Have I become desensitized to anything in any way? Because if you have, then now might be a moment to recognize that you could step away from this path heading to increasingly shocking sins. Anyway, aside, back in, and Ahab has been doing all of these terrible things. And because of it, God's spoken to our hero, Elijah, and he's told Elijah to go to the king and to say that there will be no more rain on the land at all until God says so. It's going to be several years. Now, if you live in the northwest of England, this punishment doesn't quite land in the same way that it would, right? You know, you're like, oh, what? No rain? No. That's me told. Right, but for these guys, this was serious, right? It wasn't so much that the punishment was no rain, the punishment was no food, because nothing would grow for years. And that will begin to affect everybody. Nobody is coming to save you because we're not in the period of international trade with refrigerated ferries. There's nothing happening there. Instead, 3,000 years ago, no rain, no food. That's a disaster. So at the start of the passage, we're already in the drought, and Elijah, our hero, he's living near a brook. And then it says in the passage that the brook has completely dried up. And so obviously this now becomes really, really serious. It's one thing to go for periods without food. It's one thing to go on a very small amount of food, but it's a totally different thing if you're no longer able to have a drink. And so God speaks to Elijah and he says, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon. Elijah literally can't drink, and God has spoken to him, go, you need to go now before you die of thirst. Off he goes, and God says, I've directed a widow there to supply you with food. So Elijah arrives, and as he arrives in this place, Zarephath, he spots a woman, and she's collecting sticks. And he says to her, can I have a drink? Now, it seems like that's no problem, because off she goes to start collecting a drink, and then he calls after her and says, oh, and while you're going to get the drink, do you think I could have a piece of bread as well? Because it seems like, oh, I guess she's got access to some stuff. Maybe she could give me some bread. And she responds very simply, I have nothing. I have nothing. Absolutely nothing. She says, I have a handful of flour and a tiny bit of oil. And then she talks about the plan. The plan is that she's collecting sticks so that she can go and make a fire. Then she'll mix together the oil and the flour, and she'll bake a little loaf of bread over the fire. And then her and her son will eat their last meal before they die. That's the plan. And she explains this. And you think, what a situation to be in. I mean, what an unbelievable situation for this woman to be in. Such a tragic situation. Just imagine that for a moment. You're out and you're collecting sticks. It's like, this one's for my last meal. This one's going to cook my son's last meal. What an incredibly tragic situation. And so presumably at this point, Elijah would say something like, "Oh, so sorry. I thought you were the widow who was going to provide me with food that God had told me about, but you're obviously not the right person because you're about to cook your family's last meal. I feel embarrassed that I even asked. Carry on. I'll go and find the correct widow. Maybe she'll have food for you as well, and then I could bring some back." You know, that's presumably what Elijah is going to say. No, Elijah says this. Listen to this. He says, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you've said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." And there are two words in that passage that just jump out to me. It's the words, but first. But first. So here's this woman with nothing, and Elijah says, "Don't worry, carry on. You go and begin making the bread for you and your son. But first, before you eat any of that, I would like you to give some of it to me. Don't worry though, because God will provide for you. The flour won't dry up, the oil won't dry up." And again, presumably at this point, the woman would say, like, "You're having an absolute laugh, aren't you?" Like, no, obviously not. Obviously, I'm not going to give some of my son's final meal to this strange man who's just walked into our village. I'm not going to do it. And also, if there is going to be a miracle where the flour keeps going and the oil keeps going, why don't you have some of the miracle bread? I will just have the bread that I have. So I'll make that. You can take the risk on the stuff that's going to keep on appearing. Surely she would say that. But again, no. Instead, she says yes, and she goes home. She gives up the very last of what she has. The very last of what she has. And in an instant, just like that, as she gives it, one of the most incredible and beautiful stories of provision in the whole of the Old Testament happens. And her future and her son's future are safeguarded because of this courageous act that this woman chooses to do for a stranger that she doesn't even know. And I'm not going to tell you that that is exactly the way personal Christian giving works. That if you personally were to give up the very last of what you have, then you can absolutely guarantee it. Because I am not the prophet Elijah, and you are not a Middle Eastern woman collecting sticks. So I'm not going to tell you that that's the way it's necessarily going to work for you personally. But what I can tell you is that there is a consistent pattern throughout Scripture where people step out and they risk what they have in faith, trusting that God can do the rest. And as they step out and risk something or give something that they have, then God consistently comes through for his people and provides for them. I mean, just like think about some of the stories, if you know some of the stories from the scriptures. So like, for instance, you could think about when the people crossed the Jordan River, right, with Joshua. And God says, you need to go like up to the river. It's like, okay, well, we're heading to the river. I can see the river. You part it now. It's like, no. You need to go like right up to the river. So go right up to the river. Okay, ready to part it now. It's like, no. You need to go into the river and then I'll begin to part it. And as they step out in faith and begin to literally risk it, God opens up the river for them. Think about the disciples trying to catch fish. And Jesus calls out to them. He's like, put the nets on the other side. And they're like, but we've been fishing all night. We're not going to put our nets on the other side. We're fishermen. You're a strange man. I'm not going to do this. But Jesus says, if you do it, then you'll receive. And so they put the nets in and they risk doing another thing. They risk working. He doesn't say, I'm just going to fill your boat with fish like that. Instead, they step out in faith and God provides for them. Think about Jesus and the feeding of the 5,000. It's like, presumably Jesus, you could just like feed everybody, just provide for everybody. But instead, Jesus waits for just one random boy who seems to be the only person in the whole place to have brought any lunch to come and give what he has to share round, which is a ridiculously small thing that would never be enough. And Jesus uses that to multiply it, to provide for everything as this young man is generous. So God multiplies what he has. This boy does his bit and God does the rest. And I think that's the principle that I felt God wanted to speak to us as a church about this morning. To say to us as a church, if you do your bit, then I'll do the rest. As a church, if we do our bit, we can rely on God to do the rest. And so the question is, will you do your bit so that we can do our bit, trusting that he will do his bit? And, I'm convinced that as we do it, we will see God provide for us in incredible ways. And he will do remarkable things that we've never experienced before. So, let me give you an example. The last time I spoke on giving, which was 9 months ago or something, it was the third week of this project, the Generosity Project. And before the service, I was just down here, sort of where John is. And somebody from our church, who I won't name because they want to remain anonymous, and I totally respect that. Someone from our church came to find me, and they said, I want to give a gift to the church. They had this tiny little envelope. Thought, okay, well, that's very kind. Thanks so much. They gave me this thing. I opened it up, and inside this envelope was like a little tiny gold bar, right? Which is kind of crazy, but quite a lot of crazy things happen here. So I was like, wow, great. Now, the only things I know about gold bars I learned from watching The Italian Job. So I was out of my depth at this point, and it was like, what's the deal with this? He was like, it weighs 100 grams. And I looked it up as of this morning. 100 grams, if you wanted to buy 100 grams of gold this morning, it costs like 10 grand, right? So this is a phenomenally generous gift. I don't care who you are or how rich you are. Giving away £10,000 is a phenomenally generous thing to do. Anyway, that's how the story begins. In the service then, that same day, I was preaching. And you can go back and listen to this. It's the third week of the Generosity Project. You can check my story out. I was preaching, and in my talk, I made up this story. And the story was, imagine you live at house number 3, and your neighbor at number 5, just terrible person, very stingy. They collect your deliveries and then send it to your worst enemies, that kind of person, and just awful. But number 1, they're so generous. And number 1 does all sorts of things. They come round your house, they mow your lawn for you when you're away, they trim your hedge, they clear it all away. And I told this story. Anyway, at the end of the service, the person who'd given this gold bar came up to me and said, you're not going to believe this, but I live at number 1. And I go round to number 3's house. I mow their lawn and I trim their hedge. What do you think that means? And I said, well, I think it's easy. I think it means that you're an extremely generous person, and God wanted to say thank you to you. And I tell you that because it gives me confidence that God is not at all concerned about the future of this church. He can provide more than enough so that when he decides to do something remarkable, and I'd say miraculous, all he does is say thank you to somebody who was already being generous. That's how unconcerned he is. It's not like the bank is full of money. It's not like the roof is fixed. It's not like any of that. What he does when he intervenes miraculously is he says thank you to somebody who's already giving. And that says to me that he's not at all concerned about the future. And so neither am I. I'm not concerned about it at all. Instead, I want to call our church into a level of generosity and giving so that God could look at us and say, wow, what a generous church. and just say thank you to us and do the remarkable things that he's done of providing for us over the years. I want to ask you, I guess, this morning, would you be willing to be part of us being a generous church? Will you do your bit so that we can do our bit? And then we will see, I believe, God doing his bit. So, before we do that, I want to show you one more thing to help you get this in, hopefully, your heart and your head. I brought a thing with me. It's one of these. One of these. Everyone knows what these are, right? So the other day I was out by a coffee shop. I saw some teenagers in the middle of the day outside. I thought, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in school. But then I realized they were wearing one of these. And one of these is, of course, it's like the t-shirts that you get on the last day of term, and you get everybody to sign on your t-shirt. And this is not my actual one. I couldn't find my actual one. I wanted to find it, but I couldn't find it. It's also probably not family friendly, my actual one, just being honest. But I found this one anyway. So what you do, of course, is that on that last day of term, you come in your normal t-shirt, and all of your friends and people that you know and stuff, they get Sharpies out and they write on your back and things and write all sorts of stuff. You know, this says things like, keep going, keep rocking, see you in the summer, kiss, 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 etc. And what this is about is it's not, signing someone's shirt isn't saying like, I'm going to cover all your costs. It's not saying like, I'll pay your student debt. It's not saying I'll rent you a property or I'll feed you for the next 3 years or I'll buy your first house or anything. It's not saying I'll put on a wedding for you. It's just saying I'm backing you and I'm in. It's saying just put my name down. Put my name down. I'm for you. And I thought that was like a picture really of where we're at as a church. It's like in many ways we're kind of graduating from something that's provided for us for ages. And today, I guess what I'm looking for is 28 people who would say, like, put my name down. I'm not promising that I can cover all your costs. I'm not promising I can fix everything, that I can cover the next 3 years, that I can pay off your student debt or whatever. I'm just saying, like, put my name down. Put my name down. And so what I've done is I've bought us a shirt as well. This is our one, right? Our church's last day of term shirt, as it were. And it's blank at the moment. And in a moment, I'm going to pray, and then the band are going to lead us, and we're going to worship. And as we lead, as we worship together, I want to encourage you, if you're somebody who you already give regularly to our church, you're already signed up to give regularly to our church, come and sign the shirt. Say, I'll put my name down, I'm contributing. But also, maybe you're somebody today who's like, I'm up for it. I've not been giving regularly so far, and I can't promise I can cover everything, but I'm up for it. And if that's you, I want you to come and sign our shirt, to write your name down or to write whatever it is down. And you can decide what generosity looks like for you. You know, and then we can talk through all the paperwork. As you come up, you can get one of our little cards that'll show you everything you need and a little kind of pledge thing. And we can talk through all of that. But today, I guess I'm asking, would you come and sign our shirt? Would you do your bit so that we can do our bit, trusting that we'll see God do his bit?